যাবে না।
Okay, anyhow, welcome to everyone present at this seminar, the title of which reads Our Feminist Foremothers, Tales of Courage and organized by the let us be light the lamp in a prayer. What in me is dark in your mind? Please. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from illusion to truth, from darkness to light, and from death to immortality. We feel honored today to have with us distinguished academics from different institutions. Presence, I'm sure, will expose us to a plethora of thoughts and ideas regarding the topic. I take this opportunity to welcome our respected principal sir, Dr. Shokya Prasad, Dr. Apurna Bandyopadhyay from the Department of History, Diamond Harbour Women's University, Chairperson, first session, Dr. Rinita Madhika from the University of New Mexico, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Mudumita Mochumdar from the Department of English, Diamond Harbour Women's University, our resource person, and Professor Champa Koshar from Jogesh Chandra Chaudhary College, our chairperson for the second session. We welcome all other faculties who are present here, Professors Guru Mukherjee and Vikram Mukherjee from New York College,
Professor Payal Bushu from Kulkuli B.R. Ambedkar College, third academic. Instead of a bouquet, we prefer giving a sapling or a plant, which will, remind you of our college, of our institution every day. Dr. Rimika Majumdar, our keynote speaker. Dr. Madhumita Majumdar, our resource person. And Professor Champa Ghoshal there, the man sitting in the middle. And Professor, and of course, and our very dear, our principal, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please, thank you, guys. I would now request our principal, sir, Dr. Shokha Prakash, to kindly welcome the guests.
Good morning, everybody. Honorable speakers, respected teachers, dear students and distinguished participants, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's international seminar. Our Feminist Foremothers, tales of courage and strength held in our college. The seminar has been organized by Department of English, Dhruba. So I would also like to offer my sincerest thanks to Professor Sudhakar Singupta, convener of this seminar and head of the Department of English of our college, and all other faculty members of the department for their sincerest efforts to organize this seminar. I am very much grateful to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Renita Mujumdar, affiliate faculty, women, gender, and sexuality studies of University of New Mexico, consented to deliver valuable keynote speech in this seminar. It is my pleasure to welcome her to my college I'm also honored to welcome Madhumita Majumdar, distinguished speaker, and Apurna Bandyopadhyay. I am very much grateful to them because I am sure that presence will enrich this seminar. Now I take the opportunity to proudly mention the academic heritage of our college. Uh, There are many students of my college who are established in different parts of the society. Contributed to society for the development of the nation. Our college was established in the year 1960. Not only aspired to highest academic standards, but actually achieved it. Located far from the city of Calcutta, our college provides uh, a suitable academic environment of learning, and the feature of this college is to quest for academic excellence. We provide education to our students to instill values in them and thus empowering them to cope up with the challenges in the society. Today's seminar is focused on the feminist foremothers who contributed to the field of feminist therapy, feminist psychology, and women's. They inspire and encourage our students to take up their tasks and their journey to, to outer ages of humanity possibility. I am very much confident that today's session will be very much interactive and all of us will gather enough knowledge at the end of the seminar. I hope a grand success of this seminar. Once again, I welcome all of you in our famous and enjoyable
The mic. The mic.
thank you.
Thanks for the- the mic.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thakur.
An interesting international seminar on the topic that is our feminist foremothers, tales of courage and strength. I would like to thank Sharla, our principal and chief patron, for his constant inspiration in giving us the impetus to organize such seminars. I would like to say and also thank them for sharing their valuable time. I welcome our guests from different colleges and universities and of our own college as well as our students for attending the seminar. And I'm sure that today's program will be a grand success. Wishing all a very good day.
Now, before academic session, we would begin this academic session with Saraswati Vandana by Foremothers.
नमस्ते सरदा देवी वीणा पुस्तक वती नंदी सरदा चतुरा अभया मोरो नानी नमस्ते नमस्ते सरदा देवी वीणा पुस्तकधारिणी विद्यारम्भं करी स्वामी प्रसन्नः सर्वदा नमस्ते.
We sincerely pray that Devi Saraswati's blessings are always on us, on each one of us. Now for the first academic session, I would request Dr. Apuna Bandyopadhyay to please kindly conduct this session as the chairperson.
Thank you, Dr. Shudokina Shenmukta, for inviting me to be a part of this international seminar. Well, when I came to know the theme of this seminar, I was excited. Our feminist foremothers, themes of courage and strength. The topic that is very close to my heart. I'm very thankful to the authority of the principal of this college, Dr. Debashish Shau, and all the teachers of this college for inviting me to be part of this grand occasion, part of this grand international seminar. It is really a pleasure to be sharing the platform with Dr. Rinita Mazumdar, a pioneering feminist thinker and philosopher, and with my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Rinita Mazumdar. Now let me introduce Dr. Rinita Mazumdar to the audience. Rinita Mazumdar got her PhD in philosophy from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, Massachusetts. She has a master's in philosophy from Brock University, Canada, and Calcutta University. She also has a master's degree in psychology. Currently, she is the full-time instructor at Central New Mexico Community College and affiliate professor of Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at the University of New Mexico, USA. She has taught at New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology at Texas, Massachusetts, and Canada.
She has several books in feminist theories, some of which are A Short Introduction to Feminist Theories, Feminist Economics, Feminist Sexuality, Feminine Sexuality, A Feminist Manifesto, Understanding Gender, etc. She also has a book of poetry, She Was Dream in Albuquerque. She divides her time between India and the USA. Her latest publication is To Biomedical Ethics, An Introduction to Biomedical Ethics. Dr. Renita Mazumdar will be speaking today on the divine rupture of femininity as man syndrome. So over to you, Dr. Mazumdar. afternoon, everyone. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks to the principal of the college, Chudakshina, and everyone present who's here and made this seminar possible. This is a presentation which, for me, is half-baked because I'm still researching on it, especially the part on this category. Analytical category of Honda is something that I myself am a student of. I'm still learning. So I will read my paper slowly and I'll stop in between as we'll go through this, and then there are points where I'm going to also talk. And please stop me, sometimes I get carried away if I'm rushing. In this presentation, I analyze the unique concept of Kanya in the context of the Panchakanya, the 5 female iconic figures in Indian history/mythology. During this presentation, I show that the concept of Kanya is a unique concept that does not occur at all in Western feminism. And this is something that even post-colonial feminists have not dealt with. In psychoanalysis or anthropology, it lies in overcoming the contradiction and binary of feminine/divine, the symbolic versus the real, the mind-body dualism, and shows how Kanya is a fuzzy concept which overcomes the linear patriarchal time and goes beyond performativity, and the Lacanian concept of woman as the symptom of man. And we'll go through all this. And then further, the dictum is to remember their names daily for women and men in order to overcome sins or morally prohibited action, which is significant as remembrance is a positive set of memory whereby a name is evoked that carries with it cultural significance. That is different from the feminist methodology of consciousness raising, for it takes the individual deep into his or her civilizational memory and makes one remember stories of the forgotten past. And from there, I'm going to talk about a distinction between melancholia as a feminist prototype Western philosophy versus the power of healing. And culturally, this act of remembrance is a therapeutic and involves the cleansing away of one's wrongful act. And the 5 Kanyas are typically, as depicted, are Ahalya, Mandodari, Tara from the Ramayana, Kunti and Draupadi from the Mahabharata. To understand the analytical concept of Kanya, let us first understand the notion of femininity in the Western feminist and psychoanalytic and anthropological theory. And my first part is just that, exegesis. Let's contextualize this. In the 5th century BC, Aristotle in his Politics divided social space into the public sphere of rationality and discussion and the private sphere of the oikos or the home. Greek aristocratic males were part of the public sphere, which was not an inclusive space. Women and slaves were prohibited from participating in the public sphere. They inhibited the private sphere of the oikos, from which we get the word economics. The reason put forth by Aristotle for the exclusion of women and slaves was that they naturally lacked rationality, and hence their entry into the public sphere would bring chaos to the rationally arranged hierarchical social order. Women and slaves were not totally devoid of social functions. Aristotle allotted to them the function proper to their nature, which he constructed. In nature to economic nature we don't know, he constructed. The Greek women, according to Aristotle, had confused rationality, not proper for public sphere where reason and rationality reigned. Her proper function was to reproduce the Greek species. The real function of the Greek woman was to reproduce and keep the Greek species alive. The function of the slave was to produce things for daily necessity. Because according to Aristotle, they have great manual strength, but no intellectual abilities. In the post-Galilean era, and here I am dividing the European concept of nature, which is translated as Prakriti, which I'll later show it's not true. The translation itself is a product of our epistemic balance. The great manual strength called enlightenment, post-Galilean era, when Europe started to analyze and control the natural forces via the understanding of its laws and mathematize nature, which is typically Galilean understanding of the nature, mathematization of nature. The Aristotelian theory of woman's irrational, confused mental state found its newer and more scientific expression in modern medical science, anthropology, sociology, and psychology in the theory of evolution. For example, René Descartes, the father of modern philosophy and man of science, modeled the human being in terms of the mind-body duality. And in this model, the body is irrational, guided by mechanics. It's how the body is pineal gland to move it. Pineal gland is the body. On the basis of modern medical science and survives till today, at least in the West. Freud, and I'll start my theory of femininity there, took this mechanical model and infused it in the evolutionary element, giving us a picture of a human psyche whose framework is the evolutionary model in biology. Freud somewhat demystified the human psyche by discovering the libido or the pleasure principle, because he had to do it. If Galileo and Newton can discover mechanistic laws in nature, he had to model the human being on this, because that was the ideal of also. Understood as a life force that moves through the different body parts and causes the growth and formation of the human identity and a sense of self. For Freud, human identity developed around the castration complex, which is where he got into a lot of problems. He equated death instinct in the inhibition, symptom, and anxiety, in other words. Under this threat of annihilation of life force or castration complex, the human child develops an ego, a resistance. According to Freud, we are not born with an ego. Our sense of self evolves during infancy and early childhood as the life force or libido travels through the oral, anal, and genital stages. In the oral stage, the anal stage where the libido is concentrated in the mouth and the anus, pleasure is obtained by passing of the species and by sucking. Freud also calls this the anal sadistic phase. In these stages, there is no differentiation between the I and the other, no subject-object duality. There is no duality, although later psychoanalysts said that he's wrong in this because you can't desire if there is no other. Maybe he was wrong. In Freudian terms, the ego libido and the subject libido, there is no consolidated sense of ego or self. It's a time of primary narcissism. I love me. That's what the first thing is, which Julia Kristeva, as I'll show later, goes on about Ruisa, the absolute bliss, where there is an absolute unity of the mother and the child. It is a return to the state. Freud claims that we are striving for a present pursuit of happiness. I find it very interesting that according to Freud, our ultimate goal is to return to that absolute unity in the womb. And this is very close to Indian philosophy. We want to attain that bliss. Referring to the treatment of idealization, Freud suggests that since this ideal, none of us can return to the womb. Condition is what we are looking for in our sexual and emotional lives. Every object of our desire is thus idealized. In other words, there is really no object. It's our idealization, our fantasization for Freud. The idea of the other as the object libido develops at the genital stage when the child enters what he calls the audible complex. At this stage, there is a sense of the other, the phallic mother. This is not a real embodied mother, but a fantasy mother. A mother in fantasy who is all powerful, who gives life and nourishment, and who is the first object of love for the child. There is a difference, otherwise there is no difference. And that he does not give up his desire for the phallic mother. He realizes that he has two options, according to Freud. In the genital state, he has to give up his masturbation, self-pleasure, and the phallic mother, or he will not have his organ of pleasure, his phallus. So he does an exchange with father. He gives up his desire for the phallic mother, the ideal mother, and he retains his phallus and he consolidates his self. But Freud was very much influenced by the Eastern theory and so forth, when he says nothing goes away. His desire didn't go away. It just went into another part called the unconscious. And this is the birth of the unconscious in Western thought for the first time. In the conscious mind, he is a consolidated male. I am the male. I possess the phallus. In his unconscious is that insecurity of his loss of the phallic mother. So the I and the other are together here. The path to feminine identity for Freud is more complex, which he said in his 1920 article, Femininity. At the beginning of life, during the oral and the anal stages, according to Freud, all humans are bisexual. The little girl is active and masturbates with the clitoris. As she enters the genital, she is already fascinated. There is no such thing as a man and a non-man. The woman is a negation of the man, so there is nothing positive. But the cause of this is her undergrowth phallus. She does not have the phallus, so she has other cause. And according to Freud, all women, the complex is symbolic. She's already frustrated, and she never possessed a womb because she doesn't possess a phallus. So within Freudian very patriarchal setup, one has to possess a phallus in order to possess a womb. And this of course went into economics and everything else. Who is masculine? I'm not talking about embodiment here. I'm not talking about male. I'm talking about masculinity. Means one who possesses property. And who is feminine? One who does not possess. It's negation. So she has a double loss. She doesn't have the phallus. Well, she had it. And according to Freud, in her mind, it's because of her, she did something bad that father has cut it off. Freud was an atheist, by the way. In fact, after writing his Moses and Monotheism, he was thrown out of the Jewish community by the rabbis. They were so mad at him. But here he says that in her mind she committed a sin because of which father, which is in monotheistic religion, the God, cut it off. So she lost her phallus, her most important organ, because of her own fault. That's inside her head. And without the phallus, she cannot possess a womb. So she loses the womb also. The mother, this makes a turn. Then she also realizes that the mother does not have the phallus. She is not the phallic mother to give her. If I don't possess $100, I can't give someone $100. So she turns against mother and and all those whose bodies are like her. She starts to hate her own body and those who are castrated like her. This, according to Freud, is the basis of women's misogyny. Because according to Freud, who is a biological determinist, of course we don't agree with him, that the basis, women hate women, basically. Moreover, she develops an ambivalent attitude towards mother, love and hate. So according to Freud, what is the possibility for the boy, which is a castration, which he didn't let happen. He retained his phallus because he gave up his initial desire. It went into the unconscious because things never go away, they just transform. Again, as I said, these people were highly read in also Eastern, their own Orientalism. It's an accomplished fact. For the girl, it is already done. She's already castrated, it's not a threat. This hurts the little girl's narcissism and she undergoes a trauma, which means being a woman within the medical establishment and psychiatry, following Freud, is a trauma. One doesn't have to go through a trauma to have a trauma. Being a woman itself is a trauma, according to this story. She goes to father to get the phallus, who does not get it either. She tries to please father, takes his beating, rape, and to get the desired organ in her body. When she does not get the organ, she settles for her biological destiny, which is, and this is typically Freudian, her original desire is the desire for the phallus like her father. She doesn't get it, she substitutes it with a desire for baby from father or father substitute. And she transfers her erotic zone from the clitoris, which is a cut-off phallus, to a bloody, wounded hole, the vagina. So actually, it's a non-organ fetal negation. It's a bloody wound, and she receives the wound in her body because of her own fault. So, an initial reason, this is Freud, and the entire medical establishment is based on extreme misogyny. Her original desire is the desire for the phallus. She goes into her unconscious and she assumes her feminine identity. She will say she desires the baby, but actually in her unconscious is the desire for the phallus. The unconscious desire of the male is also there. It's the phallic mother, the powerful absolute mother who has the phallus. The unconscious one is the identification with the he pushes into the unconscious, the boy, and identifies with father. As he retains his phallus, he may get back his primary narcissism, which is what? Which is going back to the womb, the state of absolute bliss. He won't get mother, but because he has the phallus, he will get a mother substitute. With the little girl, the original desire for the phallus goes to the unconscious, and this is very interesting. For Freud, the desire for the phallus is a feminine desire par excellence. Why? Because we only desire what we don't have. If I'm thirsty, I drink water, I don't desire water anymore. But only when I don't get water, I desire it. So we always desire what is not there. Because once we get it, we don't desire it. So the desire for the phallus in Freudian theory is a feminine desire. And it hurts her primary narcissism. Her primary object of love, like the boy, is also the phallic mother. She does not possess the phallus, hence she cannot get back to the womb, which the boy can, maybe. She turns against her mother and all the women for their loss. Normal femininity is thus founded on a double loss, not like the consolidated male identity. Her biological destiny is to change her original clitoral masturbation, her activity, into the bloody, accepting her bloody wound, and then giving up her phallic mother. Now, for Freud, there are two abnormal identities. If they cannot accept the biological destiny, then either they become frigid, saying to themselves, I cannot have as much pleasure as my brother who has, so I won't have any pleasure. That's frigidity. Or she says, this is fantasy, father has already given me the phallus. She becomes homosexual. She has the phallus. According to Freud, feminist centuries of construction. With this medical model, feminine identity is determined by this evolutionary fact. According to Freud, the original desire of the phallus never goes away, because no desire goes away, it just goes into the unconscious. She never recovers from this original trauma, although she substitutes it with a baby. But the memory traces are still there. It is a loss or a lack that causes the feminine psyche, according to Freud, to be envious, jealous, quarrelsome. In addition, women, according to Freud, have little sense of justice and has weak social interest and has not contributed anything to civilization. The only thing which women are good at is plating and weaving, which is a metaphor for their pubic hair which covers the shame of the wound. So this is what, religion is misogynist and so is science. Thus, within the theory, femininity is necessarily a position where one's desire is alienated. Woman's desire, or most people's desires, are alienated. The original desire for the phallus is substituted by the desire for a baby for father or father substitute. Analysts like Mary Bonaparte, student of Freud, Helen Deutsch, working within the feminine, within Freudian theory, said that femininity is not merely the desire for desire for pleasure, but there is another libido which Freud did not cover. It is masochism. And according to Bonaparte, the masochistic libido flows through menstruation, coitus, childbirth. Working within the male paradigm, Freud did not realize that woman's pleasure is different from male pleasure, according to Bonaparte, which is painful. The more women can adopt masochism in their body, the more pleasure they have, according to Bonaparte. These are women analysts. Helen Deutsch, who actually was one of Freud's very favorite students, said that actually femininity is not the lack of the phallus. It is masochism. And this masochistic libido circulates through women's lives. How? She says that women desire the phallus and they get it during intercourse. Then they lose it when the intercourse is over. Then they get the phallus inside their body when they're pregnant. And they lose the phallus when the child is born. Then they get the phallus back when they are lactating. Then they lose the phallus when the baby is weaned. So they again go through the entire process, and this entire process is driven by their masochistic libido, because every one of them is painful. Coitus, intercourse, childbirth, lactation, and menstruation. Now, Joan Riviera, this is a groundbreaking article by a French psychoanalyst in 1929, gives a rather radical view, said women do not lack the phallus or desire the phallus. They perform the lack to get by in society. How does she arrive at this conclusion? Now, I just said that according to Freud, either someone is a normal feminine where she accepts her defective body. According to Freud, the only normal body is a body with a phallus. Everything else is a defective body. So she accepts her defective body and her bloody wound. Or there are two other options. She can either become frigid, or saying that since I cannot have as much pleasure as my brother, I won't have any pleasure at all, or homosexual. Father has given me the phallus. Now, Joan Riviera, the French analyst, she takes this division and she goes, she takes up something from Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones is the translator who have the subject libido. They incorporate father inside them, and feminine, they enjoy femininity in the other, like father would do vicariously. Homosexual women who have the object libido They still desire men, but they complain about men's injustice. Taking this cue, Joan Rivera said, femininity is not the lack of a phallus, it's the performance of a lack. She said there are many women who are very good at the feminine, traditional feminine jobs like mothering, housework and so forth. But they're also very good at public speaking. Now here she mentioned something very interesting, which when I was hearing the Saraswati Bandhan, I was thinking that it's not true in every culture. Nobody's word. Because she has castrated father, because at least in the Greek tradition, logos belongs to the male. Here it's a metaphor. The word father is actually God. Because women are not allowed to touch the scriptures. So father will take revenge on them. So to please father, they behave stupid, they behave feminine. So femininity is a performance of a lack, not a lack. They behave stupidly, they wear, in fact, takes on. Says femininity is a mask. If I behave coquetry, they flirt with father, they wear dresses that are very babyish, they need protection which they don't. They behave in that way so that father won't suspect that they have castrated father and have stolen his phallus, which is logos. Which is very interesting. Hypatia, who was the women philosopher in Greece, she was killed because she has castrated father, but she has taken the logos. She has, see, that's the whole thing here. So for Joan Rivera, femininity is not a loss, it's a performance of a loss. Pretend of a loss to get back to society. Many times, children and the object appears much before the genital stage. The first other is a part object, the breast of mother, which is taken as a whole. I shall return to this concept later on. Now, according to the model that we saw, feminine identity is equivalent to the identity of a mother because of the masochistic continuous coitus, pregnancy, childbirth, lactation, and again the whole thing. The loss of the original desire, which is the desire for the phallus, substituting the original desire for a desire for baby from father or father substitute, and most of all, the absolute loss of mother. Why? Because in this model, one can only possess a womb if one has a phallus, but since she lost the phallus, she can never enter the womb. So she is kind of, this is, actually it's very interesting, these Jewish guys, they developed this whole thing that almost 100%, 90% of them were Jewish. They were all atheists, but they couldn't get out of that whole Old Testament kind of sin and the New Testament, the Adam and the Eve and the sin. The whole story is repeated here. It's her original sin. And they say it's actually evolutionary because they're all scientists. But the stories are told in a way that it's actually her fault that she's raped. It's her fault that she's been abused, no one else. That's the whole medical model that we get. Femininity is as a loss and melancholia. Now comes the next stage, the feminist response, which is not that great for women either. The above theory of human identity development by Freud was made more complex in mourning and melancholia. In the above essay, Freud analyzes melancholia by comparing it with mourning. The two express similar symptoms, and he concludes that melancholia is a pathology, while mourning is a temporary condition. In mourning affects the psyche because of the loss of an object of love due to death or some other reason. In melancholia, the object of love need not be dead. One may have withdrawn the love or have been slighted, jilted, abandoned the person. Both mourning and melancholy show the symptom of painful dejection, loss of interest in love, and inhibition of all kinds. Moreover, in mourning, the mourner exactly knows what caused the pain. In melancholia, one knows what caused it, but not how it is caused. There is something unknown in melancholia that one cannot point their finger to. At the root of melancholia is psychic discomfort. In other words, it's a pathology, it's a medical condition. One further intriguing thing in melancholia, according to Freud, is that melancholia has an ambivalent attitude towards the lost object. There is both love and hate. The melancholic has given up the object of love, but not love itself. She still desires. She has given up the object of love. Via the observation of cases in clinical setting, Freud concludes that a mourner can be brought back to happy and normal condition via evidence therapy, whereas the client and the therapist goes through arduous task of recalling memories involving the lost object. Thus, slowly through working through, they can see reality. But in melancholia, the task of restating the normal psyche is much more difficult, for it is not a condition but a complex. The most intriguing thing about melancholia is that the melancholic critiques himself severely and declares herself as worthless or of little value. In other words, people who have this pathology, they actually blame themselves for someone's death, and they never recover. It's complex. It has moral overtones. The melancholic does not critique his own social position or lack of material wealth, although he's worried about this, but he's severely critical of his moral actions because he thinks he is responsible. Now, this is very interesting for feminist theory. The next point. The melancholic flaunts her condition of being slighted and relishes the injustice done to her. Actually, the victim becomes, her victimhood is very pleasurable to her. Yeah, this is a very complex issue. In this sense, the condition of the melancholic is similar to that of hypochondriac who enjoys his symptoms and relishes his illness. Seems odd, but that's what it is. According to Freud, what happens is there is a split in the ego of the melancholic. She identifies a part of the ego with the lost object and she becomes that object. On the other hand, the ego becomes the moral supervisor, the other part, which critiques that part that identifies with the object. By critiquing the self, it identifies with the lost object. The melancholic is critiquing the lost object. In addition, by relishing her illness, she is creating a sense of guilt in the lost object. Part of the ego is identified and carries back to sadism. When the melancholic tries to commit suicide, it is when he has turned part of himself to the ego and wants to kill that part. So a part is the desire of, there is no other, but he others a part of himself or herself and then critiques it. According to Freud, the complex of melancholia draws all the libidinal energy and impoverishes the ego. It's almost dead. It's an open wound. This is where Iligere will come in. Melancholy is a pathology, and all pathologies are open wound. What happens when we cut something in our body? Eventually we heal, right? We heal. But what happens, and I'll come back to Tolstoy's story at the end, when that healing never heals. It's an open wound. It comes back and back and back. And I find it very interesting. I think Ashwatthama probably, he had that symptom, yeah. And it's very psychoanalytic actually. His narcissism is hurt and the ego wants to identify with the object by devouring it. So in many melancholic, there is an inhibition against taking food. Of course, he is blaming himself. It regresses back to the oral state, something that Freud says is derived from the clinical observation. And the object results in a form of hysteria. This is where we come in. Louise Irigaray, the French feminist, says melancholia, femininity is not the loss of object. Femininity is melancholia and it's hysteria. And she uses it in a positive way. We have seen that the melancholic cannot point his finger at what is causing the pain, the loss of interest in love and loving. The source is not the conscious mind. For Freud, the source of this must be in the unconscious, where the memory traces of the lost object are there, because it surfaces when something is pushed down, repressed, the return of the repressed. That's Freud's therapy. The pre-conscious represses the memory, it doesn't get lost, and it penetrates into the conscious mind. And the person goes through cyclically manic phases and depressive phases, which nowadays in medical terms they probably call it bipolar, although I'm not very comfortable with that. Manic phase and depressive, this is what happens. Something heals and then it comes back. Something heals, it comes back. So it's very cyclical. So when we get from the traditional psychoanalytic theories that femininity is a loss and a melancholia, essentially femininity can be defined negatively. Joan Rivera, as we saw before, said that femininity is nothing but a performance. When she cannot accept her biological destiny and she behaves like a man, she's scared of father's wrath, and she performs femininity. Now, Luce, taking a cue from Ernest Jones, she says that. Now, Lacan, the question of feminine identity as a result of the castration complex as being the point of debate in 1920 in the psychoanalytic community. Why? Because how can women have castration complex to build femininity? I'm only scared of losing what I have. If I have $100, I'm scared of losing it. If I don't have $100, I'm not scared of losing it. They said, how can you explain women's development through castration complex since it doesn't have a complex? So your theory is not good. An answer was provided by Jacques Lacan in 1940s and 50s. The self is depicted as the other. Now he explains this through two interesting anecdotes. The first is the mirror stage. She says that the child for the first time realizes its wholeness. Before that, like when the child is about 2, 3, 4, 5 months, they can identify their body parts but not the entirety. The first time the child knows himself as a whole is when mother is holding him up in front of a mirror. So it's only in the mirror, in the other, that he sees himself as a self. So he needs the other to have this kind of whole self, which is a fantasy because it's not something that he comes up with, it's only in the other. So see, every identity is a loss. When I'm identifying myself with the feminine, I'm losing the male side. When I'm identifying with the male, I'm losing the when I'm identifying with anything, any identity, as a working class, I'm losing that part of the elite class that is also in me. So every identity is built in a loss, and that is what the mirror stage is. We cannot have an identity without some loss. The concept of the wholeness, which is actually the divine, is impossible. So it's a fantasy. The desire for the phallus goes into the unconscious, and the normal woman becomes normal by accepting the biological destiny. The I that we talk about, when we talk about the I, it's really a méconnaissance, misrecognition. It's a structure that language imposes on a loss. Now, his second anecdote, which I find fabulous, is his reinterpretation of Edgar Allan Poe's Purloined Letter. So what happens is the king is sitting in court and the ministers are there and the queen is sitting there. And the messenger arrives with a letter. And the queen realizes the letter is from her lover and she's very agitated that the king will find out. A minister sees that, and in order to avoid any chaos, he exchanges that letter with a fake letter from someone else. Another minister sees that exchange and says, no, I have to exchange this, otherwise the king will be angry and there will be chaos. So he exchanges the exchange letter with another letter. Then someone else exchanges the exchange letter with the exchange letter, and it goes round. So in the circulation, one does not know what is real and what is fake. So he actually is very close to Indian philosophy. Who are we really? It's all fake, it's all performance. So that's the mask and the performance. It kind of gets messed up. If there are English teachers here who will probably tell you the word person is mask, right? Yeah, the Greeks were very fond of plays. Is there any time of the day that we unmask and go into our real selves? We are always play acting somewhat. And that's what he's saying, that there is no real I. It's always continuous performance. Now, so no one has the phallus, no one has that complete I, that divine I. But the difference between the male and the female is the male refuses to acknowledge that he also is not the complete I. I have the phallus, so I'm the complete I. And because of his own insecurity, he imposes the lack on the female, on the other. This is very Nietzschean, Nietzsche's late dialectics. I am moral because you are immoral, you are immoral, you are immoral, I am moral. But with the female, she's a loser. She already knows she doesn't have the phallus, neither does the man. But she pretends she doesn't have, he has it to keep things in order. That's how continuous play acting, that's what we do. This I love Laka because he said at every moment of our life, that's what we are doing, we are play acting. And the male pretends, deep down he knows he's not the divine just because he has the phallus, but he imposes the lack on the world. Another important point here is that we see is why the loss of the mother is needed for the woman. One cannot have a mother, she will never have a mother, she will never possess a womb because she doesn't have the phallus within psychoanalysis and be a mother. So in order to be a mother, she has to actually lose a mother. This is the inherent contradiction between being and having in Freud and the universal law of incest prohibition. It is in our blood because they drank his blood. In Mahabharata, they didn't Shahadev eat his father's breast to eat them. All these metaphors are there also. And so they will, what will they do? They will transact the woman to other tribe and they will bring women from that tribe. This is what marriage is. It's transaction. Marcel Mauss, the French anthropologist, in his book The Gift, says that in pre-state societies, there was no state, but tribes didn't always fight. Why? Because there was a custom of continuous gift giving. I give you bags of rice, you give me super, whatever. So there's continuous gift giving. Levi Strauss, who was Marcel Mauss too, said that human beings stepped from nature to culture when they started exchanging. But this exchange of potatoes and rice, these are perishable. I'll eat the potatoes, you'll eat the rice we exchange. What is the universal commodity of exchange that establishes a kinship structure? And Levi Strauss, through his extensive research, found that it's a commodity called woman. If I exchange woman, then we exchange blood. Then I don't attack you. I may attack you, you don't attack me. It's that. So kinship is a cultural rewriting over raw desire. A woman, a female, a biologically raw female becomes a cultural commodity called woman only through a process of exchange, intertribal exchange. The purpose is to establish, it's a market basically, establish kinship structure. Hence, like Aristotle's organization, she remains outside the polis. Why? Because Levi Strauss says she carries the phallus from this tribe to this tribe, but she is not the owner of the phallus. Like the donkey or the ass who carries the laundry, he doesn't own the laundry, he just carries it. So she carries the cultural phallus, but she's not an owner of it. So women are outside of culture, but they are the foundation on which the entire cultural superstructure is built. Julia Kristeva in Stabat Mater says that women have always been outside of the patriarchal linear history. The only time when women, according to Julia Kristeva, entered history is via the body of the Virgin Mother who carried the Son of God. The Virgin Mother was able to harness the divinity into temporality. Further, according to Kristeva, this entry into the phallic system is a break from the absolute jouissance, the absolute pleasure of the mother and the child, absolute unity. In the Freudian framework, according to Freud, pleasure is always in relation to the other. Hence, it has a dualistic structure, but jouissance doesn't, because it's oneness. In traditional psychoanalysis, the original desire, the desire for the phallus, has to be repressed and substituted by a desire for baby. Thus, women's desires are always alienated. And of course, Kristeva will tell us that it is alienated because she has to forcibly enter into the patriarchal linear type. She has an Irigaray will add to this. In addition to that, she always has an open wound which leads to suffers from low self-esteem, etc. So she takes the whole psychoanalytic framework, and as part of the girl's ego identified with the lost mother, her primary object of love, she also becomes a critique of the mother. Now, let us go to the concept of the Purnea, which is different from either a woman or a virgin. Why cannot they be translated as woman? Because nowhere do we see that they become a woman through this process of transaction. They're not transacted. So it is different also from the case of Stabat Mater of Kristeva. First, the concept of Purnea does not require transaction between groups of men. Irigaray says, in patriarchal system, women have three positions. She is pure exchange when she is a virgin. Her use is for her exchange is for her use when she is a mother, or birth giver to the species. and the third is a prostitute. So she has three positions, whose more use increases her exchange value. The Kanya really does not fit in any of this because she is never transacted. She gives, but they give, a Kanya is a Kanya even when there is no transaction. Further, the concept of Kanya is not like that of Stabat Mate, where women can only enter into the patriarchal order, and the perfect example is the Virgin Mary, who gives birth supposedly to the Son of God. She enters in the patriarchal order by not giving birth to the Son of God. In this sense, the concept of Kanya does not necessarily involve alienated desire, for she does become a Kanya, does not to produce offspring as she enters into temporality, as in the case of Ahalya, and I will take Tagore's version of Ahalya, which is also accepted by some German scholars, that Ahalya means born of cloud. Kunti or Tara or Draupadi, Akanna paradoxically can carry a part of the divine or avatar in her womb for specific purposes to establish the balance of dharma, the sustaining law of nature, as in the case of Kunti, or the purpose to act as a thread where different elements of the dharma are bound together, as in Draupadi. Unlike Christopher's Stabat Mate, through which the eternal enters into temporality via the procreation of the Son of God, there is no temporal linear notion of the Kanya where there is a before and an after. The birth of Son and before that. Now, it is a cyclic order through which, when there is disbalance or adharma, they come back over and over again. And sometimes, as with her womb, and sometimes acts as a thread. The transformation from a stone that houses the inner self via divine intervention, now this is a bit radical, but I'll say it anyway, is actually, I find it very close to the Sankhya philosophy, where it specifically says in the Sankhya Karika that the Purusha needs the Prakriti to go through the entire process of evolution in order to achieve enlightenment. I read Ahalya's redemption, if that's what people want to call it, is the redemptors, the avatars, access to avatarship through the act. So he has to go through this act, through the Prakriti, in order to achieve his avatarness, and this is completely absent in Kristeva or anything. It's not her, it's him who has to go through her transformation. The end of each of the Panchakam are related to the five elements: earth, Ahalya, one who has been plowed, Mandodari, essentially a frog, transformed for the purpose of becoming the wife of a demon, and subsequent redemption, Tara, the star or ether, who has to go through being wives of Bali and Sugrit to establish the rightful heir of the kingdom, and the divine curse he gives to make birth as Krishna, as he will be slaved by Bali. Kunti or Pitha, water or well-being, who carries in her womb uterine water, dharma and other semi-divines, and Draupadi, fire that makes everything pure, binds the thread of dharma and descends on the earth. Here is a constant must between the thread and woman, as transaction is not there. For Levi Strauss, a woman forms a commodity via which inter-tribal transaction is made. In the case, and she's not the carrier of the phallus. In this case, the five elements act as agents to bring about the balance. They are not transacted. In traditional psychoanalysis, we see that the initial feminine desire of the culture, clitoral masturbation, has to end in order for the female to become the mother. And so she transforms the erotic zone from the vagina, from the clitoris to the vagina, and gives up her initial desire. The Kannas, on the other hand, are not born of wombs. So they do not have to lose their initial bondage or their initial desire or go through any kind of castration complex. They are born with a purpose, with no initial desire for the phallic mother or loss of creation. They are born to establish the balance, to bring about avatar in nature, semi-divine, and to re-establish the order of nature. Since there is no loss of original maternal juisa or pora, We cannot term Karna as melancholy. In fact, I go a little bit more radical next. We cannot talk of an open wound as Muslim says of the Karna. For there is no open wound in which she recognizes the loss of the phallus and the deep wound of vagina. Rather, one can put in the cyclic phases of joy and sadness as the universe undergoes cyclic transformation from balanced dharma to disbalanced adharma. Manic and depressive phases, continuous process of creation and destruction. In this journey, the Kalnas act both as agents, sometimes actively, sometimes bearing the divinity in her womb, and sometimes passively, as though the divinity of an avatar is broken or on which she is binding them in a thread to establish the order. The permanent stage of melancholy of the Karna cycle, rather a stage of moral effectivity. In feminist and psychoanalytic theories, the sum of this loss that cannot be represented within the calisthenic order is passed down intergenerationally. When they discover their lack, they suffer low self-esteem, and then the mother passes on to the daughter. And this, for the death of the mother, the daughter has to establish herself as a woman through the death of the mother. As Irigere says, all she is left with is hysteria. Let us consider an important point in the concept of karma as to be evoked to do away actions that are prohibited. Panchakarma Swarenitra, what is significant in this remembrance? This dictum is saying that remembering the 5 karmas, one's bad action of fruits are from prohibited action as destroyed. How can one remember names, be efficacious in breaking the fruits of immoral actions? In remembering the names, one is actually evoking the cultural memories. What are names? The dictum is to rehearse the names internally with a purpose. These names are important because they are associated with important personal attributes of the elements of or unenlightened mind that is to go through a process of transformation from the stone via divine intervention. That we breathe air, we need water, life needs earth, ether and fire and sound that is needed for us to build a civilization. These form the basis of life and healing. For me, these karmas, in the way they are, and I'm still doing my reading, are actually, not only are they non-melancholic, but they are also healing. As karmas have no clear ambiguous identity, no one said that they have reached their femininity or masculinity. They never go through castration trauma and never born out of womb. They have no loss of the original Juisa. They embody the Juisa that they used to heal the universe when they're disbalanced in order to establish dharma. In this sense, they become an avatar, not an avatar, but a healer with an ambiguous identity. The person that I find closest to in Western philosophy, surprisingly, is not a feminist theorist, but Heidegger. Heidegger talks about the Dasein. According to Heidegger, the Dasein is any individual with a worldview background. And the Dasein has to go through this trauma when he realizes that his life is mortal. Donna Haraway does talk about the cyborg as an intermediary, but that cyborg doesn't have any healing capacity. It talks about a care labor, but there is no original bisexuality, no alienated labor, so I wouldn't equate Karnas either with cyborgs. And the private and the public still remains with the cyborgs. I will evoke the story of Ivan Illich, then I'll go back to Heidegger. Ivan Illich of Tolstoy's little novella, The Death of Ivan Illich, is for me a very interesting story. Ivan Illich was a very ordinary man living what Heidegger would call inauthentic existence. He didn't raise the basic questions about the meaning of his own existence. He was just an ordinary guy like Then one day he was doing some repair work in his house. He had a fall from the ladder. And it was a little fall. And he said it will pass. And then it didn't, so he consulted the physician. The physician said, you have to lie down for a week, it will be okay. He laid down for a week, it became worse. And then it became worse. And then it became worse. To the point where he was facing death. And this is for the first time, Ivan Illich, a very materialistic, ordinary man, all he wanted was a big house, a pretty wife, and regular everything. He started asking the question about the temporality and the meaning of our existence. What does this all mean? The other story that really I have to bring in is Nochiketa's. Nochiketa went on and asking, he won't give up, that little boy till death, Dharma, is willing to answer the basic questions about the meaning of life. Back to Heidegger, Dasein is a temporal being surrounded with worldhood, the kanyas, the prakriti, and which forms his structural background. And because we are surrounded by the world, we are all mortal. He lives inauthentically. But once he encounters a trauma and a loss, and what's very interesting for me, I also have a degree in psychoanalysis, I do some therapy. During COVID, people who are very entrenched in their material lives, they all started asking questions, what is the meaning of this chaos and death? They started asking philosophical questions. The sign when something is lost, there is a death, he doesn't, his whole world is a chaos, like Ivanovich. Because we are so entrenched in our everyday life that he doesn't ask till there is a loss. And because he lives inauthentically, according to Heidegger, he cannot understand the meaning of death. He cannot understand the meaning of war. He cannot understand the meaning of suffering. In this worldhood, nature, Prakriti, which is showing him the meaning of his existence, his worldhood, Prakriti does acts as an agent to show him authentically, just as the avatar through his acts realizes his divinity. Dasein heals and remembers his forgotten self. I think we all need some traumas. This is my personal view. Probably we needed the COVID to make us realize, hey, life has other, which the Buddha asked, basically, sufferings. Probably we need some trauma. God is awful, but we still probably need someone to realize there's something wrong with all of us. We're not asking the basic questions about the meaning of our existence. The avatar momentarily forgot his divinity till the stone came, he redeemed it, he remembers forgetfulness of Dasein, he remembers his avatar. And I know this is radical, but I have to say this. The 5 kannas are remembered in order to redeem one's sins, probably the sins of living inauthentically, of forgetting what the real meaning and purpose is, remembering ourselves and remembering those who came cyclically to heal the universe that is in disarray or disbalance due to conflict, strife, war, deprivation. The chanting of names is therapeutic. Feminist methodology is consciousness raising, where one goes from the personal to the political. And beyond the political, there is still the question of the meaning of what we are seeking deeply. Like the existential question that Ivan Illich, the very materialistic man, asked, or that little boy, Nochiketa. The remembering of the cyclic journey of the Kanyas who came to heal, and thus our civilization of life, start looking into ourselves and find out who we really are, what our short stay in the universe means for us and for the humanity as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Anita Mazumdar. It was a brainstorming session. We were really bombarded with some very unique ideas and insights. I must admit, I should confess that I didn't understand all that you said because I have no training in philosophy. Yes, I've read a little bit of feminist literature, but not that extent didn't really go into my head. But okay, there's a few things that I think I've learned from your lecture, and I think the students and the teachers who assembled here too have gained from your lecture. I mean, there's some things that I can relate to. Is that the way you posited Punna as a novel, unique analytical category, and how it was different from the
theories that they created are enmeshed in patriarchy, androcentrism, and we as people who have lived through colonialism, through colonial rule for nearly 2 centuries, we have actually internalized Western ideas and values, Western categories of knowledge and all. Our brains have been colonized, and we have been taught to think that these are normal. I mean, these should be the way that we should think. But Professor Rinita Mozumdar has really opened our eyes and opened our I don't know, I mean, Freud was, of course, I mean, he said something very nasty and something very misogynist, but I mean, I was not aware of the extent to which misogyny could go. And the whole idea that womanhood or femininity was conceived as a lack, as a negation. I mean, how our classes, the killings of Gregory of five of our mythical character, fictional characters, Foremothers, and how Indian, traditional Indian, or ancient Indian literature, the writers of our epics have conceptualized Konna, and how there's a lot more agency, a lot more subjectivity in the idea of Konna, and how women were not seen as commodities for transaction, how woman was not seen as negation or the lack of phallus or lack of whatever, or performance of lack whatever. So I think a very critical rereading of our ancient text is necessary. And of course, and if there are any questions, please, I invite the audience to please feel free to ask our questions, even though we are running short of time. Huh? Oh, the keynote speaker, so there are no questions. So let us now proceed to our next lecture. Dr. Madhumita Mojumdar is Associate Professor in the Department of English, Ramana of the Women's University, and she had previously served at Dhamur College as Assistant Professor in English. And she specializes in Victorian literature, especially women's writings, and she has done, as far as I know, she has done a wonderful PhD dissertation on the Bronte sisters. Okay, so, and she is, of course, a very active person, a very warm-hearted person, and of course, I think her lecture will be enjoyable to us all. So, Dr. Madhumita Mojumdar.
A very good afternoon to Principal Sir, the keynote speaker, Dr. Rinita Mojumdar, and of course my dear colleagues and students. I am, of course, flabbergasted after that wonderful lecture by Professor Majumdar. I'm rather, here to share what I probably have as questions in my mind. As a student of literature, for me, the storyteller is important. To me, the narrative is important. The narratorial voice is important. I'll just...
क्यों जोड़ेगा सब जाएगा
a point, perhaps what, the discussion is primarily in a very Indian context. And therefore I begin perhaps from a point how women were envisioned. I'm of course taking it from the Manusmriti which went on to, of course, talk about women's position and women's role, and of course put women in a position where, as of course Professor Majumdar was talking about, in the position of a commodity of exchange. Now when we talk about exchange, a term that, or a word, women have been named, they have been named variously. And one of the names that of course she has been named is of course being the prostitute. And of course I'm not here talking about the prostitute, I'm talking about the wife. They perhaps played a very crucial role in the social and the cultural life. If I talk about northern part of India, singers and dancers, and of course companions, and one word that we could associate with them was therapy. They would be where women, and at a time and phase where women and letters would not go together. These women would be knowing how to read literature. They would be even grounded in literature, sometimes writing a bit for themselves, and of course entities in cultural politics and refinement. They could define, that is important. I'm taking a part of a book, which is a book on Sadabahar, Itabar. Now, Sadabahar was a popular kawaya, and of course had a lot of admirers, but when he came upon the fact that, there are two things. She had a senior guru in her. In that, I will also talk about the Guru Shishya Parampara. Sadabahar's role in her family would be that of a senior male-earning member, as in the patriarchal society. She would have a many influence of relatives and retainers, and whenever she came back from performances, what that these members of the family who would be dependent on her would be asked to actually give her a massage or even put her favorite meal, even if it was at the middle of the night. Bure Khan. Bure Khan was the old ustad from where she got her lessons from. Now, in this world of the kawayas, a term, of course, that would be, almost synonymous, would be tunri. Now, the guru would, of course, be teaching a number of these wives. In the Guru Shishya Parampara, the pure and the chaste form of the classical music would pass on to his Shishya. The Tawayat in that would also be a Shishya, and of course would be paid in the highest among all the disciples that he actually taught. Incidentally, what would happen, it would either be the son who would get this, guru, it would carry on the legacy of the guru, or it could be a son-in-law. If there was the absence of both, it could be a worthy male disciple. So therefore, the Ramayana ended up getting what would be not so a pure form of the classical language. But people like Bure Khan and many others were aware that, people like Sadabahar, Tawayat, as one would say, they would be, very considerate. They would have a kind of an ethos, perhaps no other of their disciples would have. Bure Khan, when he was ill and he was unmarried and he was, he didn't have anybody to literally look after him. At that particular point, it was Sadabahar who sort of brought Bure Khan to her home and of course, was looking after him. So, surprisingly, when he got a little better, he asked, how long have you been since you had done your last riyaz? And of course, Sadabahar says, that of course she hadn't been, doing her riyaz for some time. So, immediately Bure Khan asks her to get her tanpura and settle down to sing. Now, the song that she sang was Babu Mora Nahiya Chuto Ki Jai. So, my maternal home is something that I'm losing her. So this whole song about a young bride coming from her maternal home is captured through this particular, song, a slow tempo, deeply reflective. Now, Sadabahar sang with So Sadabahar sang with precision and precision. And of course, what I'm trying to actually gather from this particular story is that within this Savayuk Khana, there would be a kind of saying that the Sarangaya, that is one who played the Sarangi, could never hope for any better a son than a Savayuk to look after. So such story have their own gurus or the people who actually taught them knew that they could carry on the kind of legacy that they were handing their forward. What is our law? As Professor Madhugar was talking about, the lack. What is this lack? Is of course the lack is when you not recognize the existence of these people, when you do not recognize them as bearers of cultural heritage. So this is where perhaps the lack lies. The next that I move on, is of course, like when you're talking about women, the identity of women largely depends on, of course, our political entity. By political entity, I mean that, in the political sphere, in the social sphere, with the public sphere, her acceptance and her role. Now, when we, one of the ways that we negate the Kavayas is, of course, with the role, with this introduction of the 1864 law of venerable diseases, which actually identified this Kavaya Khanas or the quotas as areas where sexual diseases could be transmitted, or, acknowledging them or seeing them as only as sex workers. With the coming of the British, came to us also the Victorian morality, where, of course, perhaps in India, this idea of separating these spaces of women's performers and, the kind of sexual work existed, even if it was in a camouflaged manner to a certain extent, but by the 1960s, war of independence, if I could say, or with the fire military?
Yes.
Who are the women behind? We talk about, Rani Lakshmibai, we talk about her, we have poems about her. Khub lagi mardani thi, wo to Jhansi wali rani. Budhelo ki muh zubani humne suni thi, wo to Jhansi wali rani. So the fact that the land that she is now inheriting, or the owner, has to be protected like a Mardan. She has to fight like a man. So in that background, women actually staking their wealth, staking their identity, or seeing this nationalistic arrival in 1857 still remains a very early phase of talking about nationalism in India, but then there were people who were aware of the Western ideology of what a nation meant. So, of course, this is the first forward. So, I'm talking about Azizan Bai, who in 1857 had supported the Sepoy mutiny against the East India Company that was there. In 1857, the governance shifted, of course, from the East India Company to the Crown, leading to the spread of British rule across India alongside Victorian education and, more importantly, the Victorian morality. So nationalist leaders envisioned a nation that would be pure and that would be safe. And the problem was, the women could not be pure enough. They couldn't be sacred enough. So therefore, the courtesan and the Kavayas, they were removed from them. And of course, I'm talking from this perspective, and I'm taking the words of Sawa Diwan, who says the colonial law, starting from the 19th century, itself started impinging upon the lifestyle of not just the Kavayas, but communities of women who stood outside marital sexuality. From 1820s, there was a steady erosion of Kavayas and an onslaught upon the community practices. I'm stressing on the word community. Women comradeship is something that has been discouraged. Don't we hear, the word shokti, the friendship, is something that is never celebrated. The way being a shokha is being celebrated between two men, this bonding. So the Tawayat is actually a community that I want to see. They were well versed in literature and political events. But despite all the power and influence, the Tawayats were marked by a stigma. Stigma because they were women and they were in the public place. More importantly, they were performers. And therefore, there was a project called Tawayat Nama, Tawayat Jashan as it would be called. Here, Shubha Mudgal, she talked about how this community of Tawayats work in times of sickness, in times of such elements of daily life. I think most of us has here seen Gangubai, Kathiawar. So you will see that how women actually look after each other. And when they go up to Gangu, they actually tell that you wear a white cloth and you don't sleep with another man because you happen to be our protector. This is something which is unavoidable if I'm taking this community feeling out of the domain of the kotas or the Tawayat Khanas, as one would say. So in Kanpur in 1857, when everything was burning, the courtesans, there would courtesans would be in the streets with pistols fighting. That is not certain traditions in some spaces and certain scattered, what will I say, poems and certain anecdotes that go about that actually tell us that they have participated. They have been informers. They were messengers, acting as messengers in this particular statement. Now, a recent film, which is Hiramati, which is coming up, once again, probably simplifies this multi-layer participation in the political sphere. Now, the reason why Tawayat, as courtesan, who knew what would be, they could have proximity in spaces where women of the middle class would not have. So therefore, this proximity allowed them perhaps to collaborate, sometimes to, understand things. They would be even writing. So if I'm talking about Azizul Bhai and I'm talking about Gauhar Jan, both of them, would take out their carriages, walk out with their wealth and make an exhibition. So this presence, in a way that was exhibition only of the male domain, could only be done by them. Pushed to the margins, perhaps the Tawayats could not be, especially when you're looking at the performing artists between the 18th and the 20th century, they would slowly melt down, and perhaps you could see them getting into, what could be the film industry, from Jagan Bai to others. Jagan Bai would be the mother of Nargis. And they would be producers, they would be even directing movies, they would be writing music scores. So all of them would be important in that way. So from the Tawayats to the Baijis, as in Bengal, to the Nankis in Goa, of course they are the Devdasis. Now in the southern part of the country, when you are talking about the Devdasis, once again there will be two categories. The one category would be of the women of the higher class, the Brahmins, and of course they would be given a certain status and they would be actually functioning within the sanctorium of the temple, but they would also be Dalit Devdasis. They would be only allowed to pluck flowers or do certain work. Now, performance, all of these Devdasis would also be performing within the temple spaces. So if you have been to Konarak and if you see that Sun temple, there is a space where actually, the Narcotis or these Devdasis would be allowed to perform. Now, performance has its own politics. The moment a woman becomes a performer, she achieves a kind of a fluidity and she achieves a kind of a, she achieves a kind of a situation where she can navigate the imagination of the people. If I could show you this slide, Fijan Bai, she is somebody who is an expert in Pandavani. So this is a oral folk tradition which actually talks about the various episodes from the Mahabharata. Now, Fijan Bai, in multiple interviews, had said that she had to face a lot of problems. The reason is that if a woman is sitting and if she orality is allowed. So therefore, let's say we talk about pachalis and etc. Women can do that oral performance. But she said she wanted to dance on the stage. And she says one of the favorite things that I love talking and communicating with people is about the Draupadi Buster. Because she says that I get that power of emancipation, I get that power of, power when I can communicate that anger of a woman being disrobed. So therefore this woman in the public, again, when we talk about the Panchakanyas, and if we're talking about Draupadi and Kunti, one thing that I think, is problematized is the silence between Kunti and Draupadi. Why are they not talking? Both women suddenly. So look how women also become participants in negating the identity of woman. So during the time when I'm talking about, when I time to place Kunti and Draupadi together, Kunti knew that, having, 4 male partners was something which was allowed. She the 8th account of the life of the Tawayas included a letter from a courtesan, Vidyadhar Bai, on her meeting with Gandhi in Banaras. On his suggestion, she wrote, some courtesan had decided to start their musical performance with the veneration on national songs. One such song, sung by her, was Chun Chun Ke Phool Le Lo, was included in the letter. If you could recognize, then this is a song that Mudgal had also included in one of her famous, album, which was called Swadhinta Samar Geet. So it was in that particular volume. Now Mudgal, for that choice of song, had said the idea of artists asking for political and social change was what drew her to Vidyadhar Bai's song. The song is quite a reminder that this is not something new being done. The political class was including them in discussions on more long-term basis and not just as an election strategy. They were being asked to take part in the movement and in public life at the grassroots level. Now the reason why I try and join Mudgal with Amritalal's Nagar's tale is to develop this idea of writing story, of history. Of what Alice Walker said, that in search of her mother's garden, that there is a lack of history and therefore there is no history for women. It is we women who will have to create the history, and Mudgal's choice, I feel, is part of creating that history. So in a country where former courtesans, prostitutes participated in the freedom movement, Gandhi met a group of prostitutes in Borisha, which is in present-day Bangladesh, and in Kakinaka in Andhra Pradesh, who expressed their desire to join the Indian National Congress. Gandhi urged them to give up sex work and start spinning the charkha instead. I quote Gandhi, "My whole heart is with these sisters, but I am unable to identify myself with the methods adapted at Borisha." So he wrote this in an editorial in Young India, a weekly publication in June 1925. He continues, "I am firmly of opinion that so long as they continue the life of shame, I stress on the word shame, it is wrong to accept donations or services from them or to elect them as delegates or to encourage them to become members of the Congress." It was this Gandhi who was telling these women, raise money. Moharjan actually in between 19 captured by, by the relatives, etc. Interestingly, there are two things. She's believed to have accepted Sant Ravidas as her guru, who was part of the then untouchable caste of leather workers. And in the songs that she writes, this is one that just struck me. And of course, I do not know the Braj Bhasha that she actually writes in, but this is how it goes. Thara des mein rana, saad nahi achaye, log base sab puro. In your kingdom, Rana, the people are all guarded. Gehna gati rana ab sota tyaga, tyaga karo churo. Churo, this means the signs of the signs of being married. So therefore, I have renounced all jewelry and finally, even my wedding bangles. And then she says, Kajal tika hum sab tyaga, tyaga hum bandhan joro. I have renounced all makeup and stopped tying my hair too. Tie your hair, once again, a sign of being married. So defiance that comes within the language. So she becomes a kind of, a person who is actually talking about choice. If you've been to that temple where actually Mirabai would perform, this doesn't have a boundary. So you can very well visualize that people coming from, beyond the hills and others, coming and hearing a queen. So class boundaries, caste boundaries, all being broken. And therefore, at a time when she had to go to Vrindavan and settle down, her death is something that we are not very sure about, that is not well documented. This actually talks about, perhaps Mirabai within the domain, the very need that the patriarchal society has felt to talk about her bhakti for Krishna, for the Lord, for a male figure. This is how they have tried to make it normative or hegemonic in that way. Trying to make us lose that tale of courage that Mirabai actually stood for. Again, coming back a bit to the Devdasi movement, I would like to talk about the Devdasi movement in Goa. Now, one reason Goa, because Goa would be a new conquest. It would be, some 16 years after India became independent, that Goa would be becoming a part of this land, and the Devdasis would be a collective associated with rituals of the temple. They were that means they were without a caste, because girls who would be born out of wedlock to Brahmins, to anybody would be given to this ceremony. They did, a great thing. There would be the Maratha Samaj, which would be fighting for the rights of the Devdasis. They would say that, once India became independent, they said the Kalavantis, they should be class, and they should be given the caste of, the other classes, the upper classes. So they classified themselves as being a part of the upper class and did not, take up any other class segmentation. They said that we have the right, by the virtue of the culture, the heritage that we represent, to be called the upper class. So this was a dynamics that was there. The problem was that later, when in Goa, this would be, the state would be near Karnataka, therefore, though the Devdasi movement would be abolished, the number of the families of the Devdasis would be forced to move to Goa, and number of them would be doubles. This Maratha Samaj, which actually fought for the Devdasis initially, so the Kalavantis, as one would say, they did not take up their cases. So, when we are talking about feminism, when we are talking about courage, perhaps, talking it from a particular periphery does not include all. So therefore, when we are talking about the Dalit, when we are talking about the women of the other classes, maybe not the middle class, or those women who do not associated with this kind of negativity, or perhaps they are documented by not documenting and by not talking about their stories. Because in 1857, just after the mutiny, when the measures of Lucknow was checked, it was found the rights were the richest. So, the British, what they did was dismantle, to take away their property, so that they did not have power to indulge in participating freely in another movement. It's not about the politics or any other political movement, because it is false. Because you take away the ability of sponsorship from them. Storytelling. as it is important. I will end with perhaps Chandravati's Ramayana, which is a 16th century rendition of the Ramayana, where the narrator is a woman. Like Chidu actually said that the lion hunters actually tell the story. So Chandravati talks about Sita, talks about her life, how she's born, and there is only 2 shorters, which means very little passages which talks about the birth of Ramayana. So from the Ramayana to moving to the idea of a Sita to becoming, a tale of Sita. This is what Chandravati's tale does to us. And again, if I'm looking at the multiple versions of the Ramayana which is available in the southern part of the country, this is I think one Tamil version, again a Dalit space, where Sita comes back and asks Rama that what gives you the right to desert me when I am expecting a child. So this, rhetoric, which is important. And in Mahabharata, of course, I cannot end without talking about Hirimba, who happens to be from, a tribe in Nagaland, moves down to Tulumanadi and becomes a lady there. If this is a battle that was being fought for Dharma, if this is a battle that was being fought for justice, where was Dharma and justice for him? So, Manohar Maurya Vishwas in very recent times, takes up this conversation with the, like, Kunti Porno conversation, which is like more popular. Thereby, Katokaj asks Hirimba, why do you think I should participate in a battle where I know that I will die and I will not be born? Which is very true. The way, Abhimanyu is actually talked about in the battlefield, and we do not how Subhadra actually plans to get of her son, or Draupadi is even planning. But what about Hirimba? Why is it that, women like Hirimba, Shurpanakha and others, whose tales, are from not the main margin, but from the margins, are not to be heard or not heard. We have so many religions, talking of taking Archie and Rich, saying that, when you gain power, you revision, when you rise, you rewrite, because that is the way that you regain the spaces that has been not given to you. With so many revisions, I'm still looking for a revision that would be from Hirimba's perspective. There is a Shurpanakha that we are talking about, but what Shurpanakha? Shurpanakha, who happens to be a daughter of a rishi. So therefore, it is, making her understand her position vis-a-vis that. So, that is where the problem lies. So from Chandravati's tale to this idea of, what we have not learned. Let us remember, Ramayana is also a tale that allows widow marriage. It allows Tara to remarry. It allows Manodari to remarry. We do not remember them. So therefore, literature, is about reconstructing. Not only revision, where she has talked about the disappointment that perhaps women in the history or mythology perhaps they are there was a meeting at the mother of Porshula saying that how the idea of being a potipota, from somebody who should be obedient to the husband is actually in her interaction with Sita. She feels that sometimes our lack of understanding, our lack of experience, our lack of understanding the concepts of marriage and motherhood imprison us. So from Sita to Draupadi to Manodari to Kunti, all are motherless. If I'm to again put this characters of the Ramayana and the Devdatas, all motherless. What is this idea of being motherless? So there are individual stories that need to be told. These stories of courage will be bound together to make that community a community which is lacking and not understanding the idea of being a woman. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madhumita. That was truly enriching, inspiring, and illuminating. As Sheila Rawathan has said, women are hidden from history. That's the name of her book. Yes, women are hidden from history, and more so are those women who are lower down in the social hierarchies. The various kinds of social hierarchies exist, as we know, based on caste, based on race, based on religion, and also women who are lower down hierarchies. They are marginalized, they are invisibilized, their voices are not heard, they are not seen at all. So it is the task of women's history, it is the task for us all to recover these women who have been driven away from that part of history, who have been erased from history. And of course, women that provide who did not conform to the ideal of the dominant hegemonic ideal of the chaste wife or the good mother. These women are marginalized. They have not been visible in history at all. So, but they have their stories to tell, and it is stories to tell, and it is our duty to recover their stories and to retrieve their voices, to retrieve them from the marginal location and bring them to the fore, to foreground their non-conformity, their agency, everyday act of defiance. Okay, so and that precisely Madhumita has done for us all. So খুব ভালো লাগলো মধুমিতা, আমি স্টুডেন্টরা ঠিক অন্যমনস্ক হয়ে যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু তাও আমি একটু সংক্ষেপে বাংলায় করে দিই, যেটা অসাধারণ কাজ যেটা করেছে এটা ওয়াইফদের, কিন্তু একই সঙ্গে ভক্তি আন্দোলনের যে মেয়েদের কথা হয়েছে, আবার রামায়ণ মহাভারতের যে নারী চরিত্র। অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমরা আগের লেকচারে রামায়ণ মহাভারতের প্রসঙ্গ পঞ্চকন্যার কথা শুনছিলাম। এই পঞ্চকন্যার সঙ্গে বোধহয় ওই হিড়িম্বা আমরা ইনক্লুড করতে পারি। আসলে একটা টেক্সটকে তো অনেকভাবে পড়া যায়। কেউ একজন ফেমিনিস্ট কিংবা কোনো ফেমিনিস্ট ক্রিটিক হবে রামায়ণ মহাভারতের মধ্যে মানে patriarchal elements, but obviously there are very strong over patriarchal elements in this text. But in that alternative reading are possible. Silences গুলো দেখা বা minor যে characters, women characters especially, সেগুলোকে যদি আমরা দেখি তাহলে হয়তো আমরা একটু অন্যভাবে করতে পারবো। Then read the alternative readings of this text. And of course, monostritiর কথা দিয়ে শুরু করেছে আমাদের। Monostrity is a manifest faction Indian context. So, অসাধারণ কাজ, এবং এছাড়া একটা ওয়াইফদের যে ভূমিকা সিপাই বিদ্রোহীদের ওয়াইফ যে ভূমিকা চলে এসেছে, গান্ধীবাদী আন্দোলনের ওয়াইফের ভূমিকা। আমি দেবদাসীদের কথা একটু মনে পড়ছে, and these Devdasis they had wanted to meet Gandhi and they wanted to contribute to the nationalist cause, but Gandhi was initially hesitant because these elite middle class women, I mean they didn't want Gandhi to come to meet these Devdasis, and they didn't want the Devdasis to align themselves with the nationalist movement. But Gandhi initially overcame his dilemmas and made the Devdasis accepted their contributions. Okay, so in nationalist movement যে contribution এবং at the same time মানে একজন শিল্পী হিসেবে এদের যে contribution সেটা তুলে ধরা, এবং অবশ্যই they earned a lot and they paid a lot of taxes. আর একই সঙ্গে মনে রাখা দরকার কিন্তু এই ইভেন্টটাও কিন্তু ongoing, আগে শর্ট নাকি পুরোটা এটা ট্রাফিকিং এর জন্য। তো এটা মানে অনেক আলো most of them come to the profession. They have been she was betrayed by her lover. তো ওই ঘটনা কিন্তু বারবার ঘটছে যদি তোমরা বেঙ্গলের 19th century বা 20th century বাংলার কনটেক্সটে দেখো যে বারবার যেমন সেগুলো কিভাবে তাদের মধ্যে থেকে বেরিয়ে আসছে বা সেগুলো শোকেস করছে এবং তারাও সেগুলোকে প্রবাবলি এই যে আর্টিস্টিক সত্তাটা যে বেরিয়ে আসছে সেটা হয়তো তাদের একটা বড় প্রাপ্তি এবং অর্থটাও একটা বড় প্রাপ্তি। আরেকটা কথা যেটা বললে ওই মেয়েদের মধ্যে সলিডারিটি সেটাও কিন্তু একটা খুব বড় ব্যাপার, হ্যাঁ, যেটা আমরা গাঙ্গুবাই কাথিয়াওয়াড়িতে দেখেছি বা অন্য অনেক কনটেক্সটে আমরা দেখেছি যে মেয়েদের মধ্যে রাইভালরিও রয়েছে কিন্তু অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম সবাই distinction between the sex worker and the distinction that the British tradition overnight করে দিয়েছে। কিন্তু অনেকে sex work তো একটা rivalry competition এর জায়গা আছে, কিন্তু at the same time যে solidarity টা তৈরি হচ্ছে সেটা কিন্তু হয়তো তাদের প্যাট্রিয়ার্কির সঙ্গে যুঝতে সাহায্য করছে। অনেকগুলো দিক এবং এদের ভয়েসেস গুলো তুলে ধরা এবং এটা বেঙ্গলের কনটেক্সটে আমি আরো কয়েকটা বলছি, যেমন নবীন কালী দেবী কামিনী করম লিখেছে ওনার কথা এবং সুমন্ত বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায় ভূমিকা সেটা রিপ্রিন্ট করেছে, এরকম স্বর্ণবাইকে নিয়ে লিখেছেন রত্নাবলী চট্টোপাধ্যায়। তো এদের প্রত্যেকে এই জীবিকা গ্রহণ করার পেছনে যে ইতিহাসটা সেটা এবং তারপরে তাদের যে অনেক সময় অবশ্য দেখা যাচ্ছে এটাই যে they are hankering for the role of the good wife and good mother. I mean, they are not satisfied with their even though they are earning a lot. যেমন চন্দ্রমুখীর যদি দেবদাস দেখো, চন্দ্রমুখী সেই চন্দ্রমুখী কিন্তু দেবদাসের প্রেমে করছে তারপরে সব ছেড়ে ছুড়ে দিয়ে সে কিন্তু ওই মানে এটা সতীর জীবনী মানে যদিও মানে ওর প্রেমটা ফুলফিল হচ্ছে না, কিন্তু এই অনেক অনেক ধরনের একটা নৈতিক সংকটের মধ্যে দিয়েও তারা যান। এই সমস্ত গুলো তাদের ভয়েসটাকে তুলে ধরা, ভয়েস মানে না যে সবসময় প্রতিবাদ, এটা কিন্তু মাথায় রাখতে হবে। কনফর্মিটি, প্রতিবাদ এবং ওই দু ধরনের মূল্যবোধ মানে এরা প্রত্যেকেই একটা ফ্রেমওয়ার্কের বাইরে চলে, সমাজের যে মানে ভদ্র সমাজের বাইরে তাদের ঠেলে দেওয়া হয়েছে। তো অনেকের মধ্যে একটা সেন্স অফ গিল্ট কাজ করছে, একটা সেন্স অফ মানে একটা ওই সিনফুলনেস অফ দেয়ার এক্সিস্টেন্স সেটা তো ইন্টারনালাইজ করে ফেলেছে। তো সেই কারণে তাদের মধ্যে অনেক নৈতিক সংকট দেখা যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু তার মধ্যেও একটা এম্পাওয়ারমেন্ট হচ্ছে এবং তাদের ভয়েসটা এই জন্যই আমাদের কাছে খুব, যখন আমরা ফেমিনিস্ট ফোরমাদার্সদের কথা বলি আমরা কিন্তু ওই নোটেবল উইমেন, এলিট উইমেনদের মধ্যে আমার সীমাবদ্ধ রাখবো না। এই সব সাধারণ মহিলারা যারা এই ভদ্র সমাজের থেকে বিতাড়িত, যাদের এলিট ভদ্র মহিলারা যাদের অনেক সময় সংস্পর্শ ত্যাগ করতে চাইতো, সেই সব মহিলাদের যে কণ্ঠস্বর, সেই কণ্ঠস্বর গুলো তুলে ধরা দরকার এবং সেই কাজটাই কিন্তু আজকের এই হচ্ছে এই যে আজকের এই সেমিনারের মানে সেমিনারে সেটাই উদ্দেশ্য, সেই প্রয়াসই কিন্তু আমাদের আজকে বক্তারা করছেন। ধন্যবাদ। হ্যাঁ, মানে আমি বাংলায় শেষে বললাম কারণ মনে হচ্ছে ছাত্রছাত্রীরা একটু বাংলায় বললে স্বচ্ছন্দ বোধ করবে, তারা একটু বেশি ভালো বুঝবে। হালদার কলেজের ইংরেজি বিভাগ নিয়েছে, এই চর্চা থাকুক। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed and to Dr. Mazumdar. We are indeed grateful for being able to listen to such a wide variety of interpretations and such a wide subject. Now, since we have come to the end of the first academic session, I request Professor Bularani Halder from our department to formally propose a vote of thanks. And students, please don't disperse, stay here.
A very good afternoon to all. I, on behalf of English Department, Dhruba Halder College, take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our respected principal, Dr. Shoddobroto Shahu, for his words of encouragement and constant support to make this seminar possible today. We are really grateful to our principal, sir. I'd like to express our warm gratitude to our eminent keynote speaker, Dr. Rinita Mazumdar, Affiliate Faculty, Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies, University of New Mexico, our Honorable Resource Person, Dr. Madhumita Majumdar, Associate Professor, Department of English, Diamond Harbour Women's University. I'd also like to thank our Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Aparna Bandyopadhyay, Associate Professor, Department of History, Diamond Harbour Women's University. I thank all of you for carving out your precious time and help us understand and encapsulate such wonderful lectures today. I'd like to thank faculties and research scholars from other institutions for your gracious presence and participation. I especially express our warm gratitude of other departments for lending their hands to all kinds of preparation for this seminar, starting from registration to refreshments. I thank Professor Shubhasri Thakur for arranging transport and accompanying the guests. I thank Professor Shubhata Malik, Professor Pompa Bhattacharya for helping in last-minute preparations. I also thank Professor Roshidul Korim, Professor Kutubuddin Sheikh, Professor Kushal Dey for their digital support. And I'm also very much delighted to express a special thanks to our ex-student Ajimul Islam for being with us and provide us all kind of technical support. We owe special thanks to our students for their active participation today. So once again, thank you very much.
It's rather late and I know everyone is hungry. So without wasting one more word, let us proceed towards the lunch room. And I request Bula to kindly accompany the guest. Kaustika, please take bags and serve to the room number 24. Yes. And students, I have 2 words for you. Just wait. কথা হচ্ছে